oh my gosh, does my child have ADHD? What can I do to help my child? So this was my exact sentence and realization a couple of months ago as I received feedback from my kids' teachers. His teachers told me that, all the good stuff, that teachers usually say at first. And then they say, but Z has problems concentrating on his work or cannot keep up with the classwork and stuff. So Z needs to focus better in class. So that led me to reading up on all I could on attentional issues. So this is a quick summary of what I have found out about ADHD. So basically there are three main types. It's probably a whole spectrum of behavior. So it's not so simple or it's not so straightforward as, okay, this child has ADHD, this child doesn't. It's a degree of how much or how little this child exhibits these behaviors. Number one is hyperactivity, and that's where your H comes in, and it's very obvious in these kids, and these are the ones which everybody will say, okay, this child probably has some hyperactive issues. It's very, very obvious. Then the second type is the attentional issues, and that's where the A comes in, and that is when it gets a bit more tricky and people tend to or rather a lot of kids fly under the radar if they have these attentional issues, because they don't disrupt the class, they don't act out and be disruptive to the teacher or the parent. So usually they just manifest as daydreaming, procrastinating, doesn't like to do work, written work especially, and so they take on a lot of labels, and people often think that these kids are lazy or have a bad attitude. Yeah, okay, so all of these, hyperactivity, attentional, or a mix of both actually, and all of these are considered under the umbrella of ADHD. I attended a talk by Dr. Edward Hallowell. Go look him up. He's very famous in this field because he really advocates for these kids with attentional and hyperactive issues. And he's one of the few who frames ADHD in a very positive manner. These kids are really nothing more than atypical kids who have very different strengths and weaknesses, and are just very sadly often misunderstood. But their brains function in a very different way, and that's a good thing. He calls ADHD children having Ferrari brains with bicycle brakes. Basically, their brains are super zooming at breakneck speeds, but their executive control, their executive functioning, and their emotional regulation and their brakes basically are weak because they have bicycle brakes trying to be applied on a Ferrari car. The term attention deficit is a misnomer. It conjures a very different image from what is actually happening to these children. We think that attention deficit means the children cannot pay attention or cannot focus, but in fact, these kids can focus. They can pay attention. In fact, if something is interesting to them, if something holds their focus, they hyper-focus to the exclusion of all else, and so they tend to ignore you, the poor mama, or me, who's trying to get the child's attention. It's not that he's rude or defiant, he's just not hearing you. Or if he's hearing, his brain is just not processing. He hears it just floats above his head. It's not sinking in to his and kickstarting his actions. The child, the child is just so concentrating on something, a stapler. It's so fun to play with that stapler, and he doesn't hear anything else. He tunes out everything else, and that's where they are hyper-focusing. The child also tends to micro-focus, means focusing on seemingly unimportant tasks to the detriment of the bigger picture goals. For example, he's collecting his eraser dust instead of focusing on writing his draft. So this might be my son's thought process, okay? As his teacher was saying, he cannot concentrate on writing or copying, he's playing with the stationery. Yeah, so he's probably something like, he writes a word and it's like, not nice, I think Miss Tan will not like this. Okay, so I erase. Wow, so many eraser shavings. Wow, so cool. And collect them, so dirty. Okay, I collect them, put them in my Smiggle pencil box, sharpener, container. Sharpener. Okay, I need to get a pencil to sharpen. Oh, very sharp, very good. Now it's good to attack my ruler. So yeah, so he's like, then he's playing like with his pencil erasers, yeah, making them fight each other and all that. I think you've seen that in your child, right? Definitely happens to my child like every day. He can fight, make everything fight, like Lego blocks, Duplo blocks, bricks, whatever it is, he can make and come up with a story about battles, epic battles in his mind. So yeah. So yes, coming back, it's not that the child cannot pay attention. He has just yet to strengthen his ability to choose what to pay attention to and block out all other thought processes and external stimuli. When it gets very bad, it's not that the child cannot pay attention, but it's that he cannot control how to pay attention or where to pay his attention to. Some of these kids will know when they can do what, and that's how we have to step in to help them to understand that themselves and to manage their situations according to the different scenarios that they need to deal with. So if your child, sometimes when your child has distractibility issues, it's coupled with other challenges. I want to highlight one of these is that a heightened sensitivity to the senses, to the sounds, the smells, feeling. When that happens, that makes focusing on something even more challenging. So imagine in a classroom, right, with 29 other kids. Imagine your attention is being drawn all over the place, being drawn to the whirring of the fan, the sudden scrape of the chair when a classmate moves his chair, or the bird flitting outside the eco garden, you know. So the child's brain is being bombarded by all these senses constantly, and it can never take a break to quieten down and focus on something. So next time you see your child having trouble starting on his work or engaging in these behaviors, remember, he's not lazy. He does not have a bad attitude. He needs your help. He needs my help. He needs our help to tune things out to get started.